So what we're going to do is try to open up with the drumming. And so if any of you that's been at any of our drumming, these kinds, you know what we're doing. And if you don't, catch on quick.
Yeah, and so really what we want to do with the drumming today is just to open ourselves to spirit and to let go anything that we came with in here, to allow the drum beat to, you know, just fragment that out of our energy field and give it to the earth and open ourselves totally to that presence and power of the spirit. Okay? All right, we want to welcome everybody here today, and we're going to be looking at levels of awareness. In thinking about that, a couple of quotes came to mind, and the first one from Norman Vincent Peale: every problem has within it the seeds of its own solution. If you don't have any problems, you don't have any seeds. I love that, right? Okay. And the other one is no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it, which is, of course, from Albert Einstein. So these are a bit paradoxical. And that's the way that any mystery is. When we start looking at going to the level of the mystical or start working with energy, we immediately put ourselves in the place of paradox because we have to move beyond our own dualistic thinking to get to that level of consciousness. Now, the trick about the level of consciousness is that the level of consciousness can be there, and it is there, right, all the time. But it doesn't mean that we're using different levels of consciousness. It doesn't even mean that we have an awareness that those levels of consciousness exist, right? So what we need to do is we need to look at what levels of consciousness do we have that we can work with and then bring those into our awareness, into our conscious level of being. And then, because of that, every problem that exists can also exist within these levels of consciousness, right? And so that's where the seeds come from. And looking at what information can we get from different levels of consciousness that are going to allow us to find that solution, because that solution is in there. It's just not at that same level that created it, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so let's look at this in terms of different levels of awareness.
So we're going to be talking about 4 different levels. The levels to start out with is going to be the literal level, the physical. Second one is going to be the mental emotional. The third one is the symbolic, i.e. soul. And the fourth one will be energetic, also known as spirit, God, higher self, yada, yada, yada. Pick your word for that one.
So we have 4 levels of awareness that can be thought of like Russian nesting dolls. On the first layer, we have the literal. Encompassing that, we have the mental emotional. Outside of that, we have the symbolic or soul level. And then we have the energetic level. And each of these levels informs the other.
Go in and out of duality. Okay, this is going to be laying the framework of what we're going to be talking about. Is literal, mental, emotional, extreme duality. I.e., in the literal, you can look outside. We have light, dark. We have up, down, left, right. We have inside, outside, yada, yada. That's our literal. Mental, emotional, dualistically looking, you have happy, sad, angry, glad, hurt, not hurt, no. But we have all these dualistic emotional experiences. Anybody never experienced dualistic aspect of an emotion? Pretty silent out there, isn't it? But if I were to say, what are your dualistic aspects of emotion, you can come up with a lot of stories, right? That all lives in this literal dualistic aspect. Moving into the symbolic, we start to move away from the physical. As you can see, this literal being the physical, we start to move farther away. The farther away you can get out of literal, the faster, the easier you can make change. This is why in shamanic works and stuff like that, they're working out here to inform this way. Well, at the same time, our work is to change the beliefs that are here so that it can inform this way. So we're going to be talking about how that works, why we have duality, and how can we have oneness. Because in duality, literally, oneness can't exist. Anytime you use a word, you're out of oneness. You say good, it automatically implies there's a bad. So the minute we talk, you are automatically, instantaneously in duality. Does that make sense?
And another way of looking at this, and when we start looking at being able to make shifts in our reality and shifts in how we experience life, we can look at the makeup of these different levels of awareness. like Jim was saying, at this literal level, things are very concrete. And we can think of it like it's 99% matter and about 1% of consciousness. It's very real. It's hard to get beyond thinking that this is solid, even though we know that everything is made up of a lot of space. If we look at cells under a microscope, they're mostly space. We're mostly water, and yet we appear like solid physical form. To make change at this literal level is difficult because it's already manifest, it's already come into being, it's taken form, right? And so to move that is difficult. When we come up here to the mental emotional, we're getting into the area of imagination, right? We're able to use our mind to imagine things, to visualize things. So when we look at affirmations and doing visualizations and those kinds of things, that all exists at the mental emotional. And we know how powerful that can be for helping us to change what our reality is like. And that's using the power of our mind to do that. It still is in our mind, however. It's still using these thought forms. It still is in duality. So it's less matter because it's using the mind, but it's still connected to emotions, which are connected to whatever our experiences have been, whatever our memories of those experiences are, whatnot. So it still has this quite strong tie into the literal. And what it really is how we emotionally perceive what that literal reality is, right? And so here's where we start saying, what does this mean to us individually? When we move out to this symbolic soul level, now we're getting to the place where we're looking at patterns of experiences. We're getting beyond words, where we're looking at images, where a picture can say 1,000 words. Or if it is words, it's poetry, so it's evoking imagery. And these are all things that have a commonality between people, so they form patterns. So this is a level where we really can look at humanity. And what is that collective experience, and how is that collective experience being expressed through us? So sometimes we think about this as being, where are we on our soul's journey? Are we right at the beginning? Do we have that initial energy and newness and whatnot? Or are we at some place where we're meeting a challenge, we're meeting a hurdle? We're getting to that point where we got to step up to the plate to make something happen. Or maybe we're at a completion. We're at a point of ending something so that we can begin something new. These are all human experiences that we can all identify with. So this is also the level of archetypes. When we talk about the magician, we talk about different aspects, or like, say, the tarot images. Those all exist at this soul level. And because it's symbolic and it's not tied so much to our individual experience, it becomes much easier to shift the energy when we start looking out here, because we can recognize where we're at. We recognize where we're at, and we could say, okay, this is how I'm going to navigate that. And it takes us above whatever little memories, experiences that we may have had that keep us anchored. Yeah, Jim.
I got an aspect of it too. So at this level, when you're making change, there are two types of change that can happen. There's collective change and individual change. One of the ways we like to look at that is when you make individual change, you can make a change at the speed of a speedboat. They can turn at high speed very quickly in a very short period of time. Collective, you can't turn it that fast without a train wreck. It's kind of looking at like an aircraft carrier going 40 knots and have it turn in the radius of a speedboat. Don't expect it to happen. For an aircraft carrier to make that same turn, it takes a long time. So we experience that in our literal mental emotional as far as change from the individual personal up to the collective. So we can change individuals faster than you can change the collective. And in changing the individuals, the collective can change faster. So that's a dynamic of looking at this thing, another symbolic way of looking at how to make changes on different levels.
And so where we looked at the mental emotional as being that place of visualizing, we look at the symbolic soul level at the place of visioning. This is our intuitive level. This is when we're starting to connect with that aspect of ourselves that's bigger, right? That has this broader experience. So this is when we start getting messages and we're able to kind of tap in to this next level a little bit that helps us find our way on our journey, on our soul's journey. So then the next level, the energetic, now we're getting to a point where we're 99% consciousness and we're 1% matter. We still have a little bit because we do still exist in the human form. We haven't made our transition yet, but just this little bit. And so at this level, there's very little duality. The only duality is that little bit of us that we still bring into it, that little bit of identity that still knows that we exist in human form. But other than that, everything else becomes one, right? And so when we get to that stage, this is the place before the intention for manifestation happens. So in making shifts, this is absolutely the easiest place to make a shift because there isn't even a thought that occurs. And so how does a shift happen then, right, if there's no thought? The way the shift happens is our ability, if we can hold this energetic level for any length of time, like let's say 17 seconds, okay? For any length of time at all, it gives us that imprint, and it dissolves human imprints that we have within our energetic field. So it's like this cleansing, this purifying that happens from source that rewrites the slate. So there doesn't have to be thought. What it does is it puts us in connection with where we came from, our source energy. And that can make a shift like that. That can totally, absolutely change our reality in that kind of split second when we do open to this level.